According to the front page of the New York Times on September 12th, the U.S. had been attacked. Hijacked jets destroyed Twin Towers and hit Pentagon in a day of terror. This day would go down in the history of America as one of the most horrific days in our nation. Over 3,000 people were killed as a result of these attacks, and over 90 countries were represented in those attacks and those who died. On September 14th, 2001, George W. Bush stood atop a pile of rubble at Ground Zero, and with a bullhorn in hand, he spoke to the emergency rescue workers and encouraged them, and they, in response, shouted a unified chanting, USA, USA, USA. He also said from the bullhorn, I can hear you, the rest of the world hears you, and the people who knocked these buildings down, they will hear all of us soon. The American people were encouraged by his leadership. And here's a picture of the emergency rescue workers carrying people out. They gathered together. Even the animals took part in what took place all across America. Animals, shepherds or different dogs that could smell out people and out of the rubble. And then here's a good visual. This is the Pentagon, and this is where they hung the U.S. flag over the Pentagon. So the people, anyway, were encouraged by his leadership. And the History Channel tells of America coming together as one. The people started to began to show their respect by demonstrating their patriotism. And all across America, people flew our country's flags, and they put them, the little flags, attached them to their antennas and wore pins, and they wore the colors red, white, and blue to show their patriotism. And the New York Political On Time magazine states in an article titled 2001 First Responses, written by Joe Flood, the attacks on the World Trade Center towers resulted in the largest concentrated emergency service response in American history. The American people held benefit concerts, prayer services, candlelight vigils, in support and loving memories of those who had perished. You know, there was a sense of the American family in the air. And in the words of Mayor Rudy Giuliani, the attacks of September 11th were intended to break our spirit. Instead, we have emerged stronger and more unified. Hospital personnel and emergency rescue workers responded quickly, but no one was truly prepared for such a horrific event of that magnitude. In an article written by Teresa McCallum, EMT, on Wednesday, August 31st, 2011, there was no way to fully plan for what happened on September 11th, 2001, because no one could ever have expected the massive loss of life and destruction that occurred simultaneously in New York, Arlington, Virginia, and Shankton, Pennsylvania. Okay, I have some reflections from my coworkers here at Akron General Medical Center. And so, according to Dr. Julia Wallace, MD, everyone she worked with in the Akron area during the time of the attack seemed to be in shock, and the feeling of being disjointed was in the air. Cell phones were not as prevalent in that day, so not everyone had one, which somewhat stifled communication with, you know, family and friends in the New York area and around here. So the television was how everyone got their news. Information was, you know, everybody's eyes were just glued to the TV. In the words of Todd Wilkie, a doctor at Akron General Medical Center, you know, he says, I was in the lounge watching the news as the second plane hit. Doctors came and went from the lounge, some barely looking up at the TV to take notice. I think myself and my residents I work with were in shock. Work went on as usual, but there was a strange, eerie feeling in the hospital for weeks. It took a long time to digest what had happened and start to feel normal again. According to Matt Hendricks, a registered nurse at Cleveland Clinic, Akron General Medical Center, he said 911 made air travel suck donkey balls. So I had to put that in there. And in the words of Mary B., a registered nurse at Akron General, she says, I was at work on 911. I was in a patient's room medicating my patient when her husband told me to look at the TV. I thought to myself, why does he want me to look at the TV? Does he want me to watch a movie? He explained that what had just happened, that we had been hit, and the World Trade Center had been hit by a plane. I was instantly filled with dread and wondering, will Akron General Medical Center be next? Due to being a level 1 trauma center nurse at the time, I was not able to pick my children up early from childcare, but when I did, they told me, you were the only parent who did not come early to pick us up. She said, I felt guilty, you know, but we everybody congregated at church, praying and unifying. That day, many people picked their children up early. Many people wondered, you know, would we be next? You know, would this place be next? Who would be next? According to GovTech, 911 marked the beginning of major changes to the healthcare system, emergency management. The Journal of Emergency Medical Services has an article titled Lessons Learned from 911. The conclusion is the September 11th terror attacks on the United States was the deadliest attack in the history of our nation, carried out during a time of peace when our nation was not at war, killing over 3,000 innocent civilians and wounding almost 9,000 others, with the numbers still growing due to the health-related issues. Before that point in our history, the United States was thought to be an impenetrable force. No one ever thought that something as big as 911 would happen on U.S. soil, and no one was ever truly prepared, you know, for the mass amount of devastation that took place. And though the nation banded together as the American family, there just weren't enough firefighters, police, or medics to care for the massive amounts of injured and dying. Since 911, hospitals and all manner of emergency response teams have prepared themselves and continue to prepare themselves and in order to be ready for any future attacks that may occur in that magnitude. And I just wanted to ask you guys, if anyone has any comments or any thoughts that you'd like to share. I mean, now's the time. You're welcome to comment. If you want to look at these pictures a little more, you know, they tell a story in themselves. There was a lot of rubble in the background here. The dog is wore out from looking, and he's got the biscuits there. The Twin Towers being struck and the Pentagon. Does anyone have any thoughts?
I just remember I was working the election booth, and everybody that came in to vote would tell us the towers were hit, and we were having trouble believing it. I mean, wow, it was like I couldn't wait to go to lunch so that I could see the TV.
Tell about Uncle Tom.
Yeah, Uncle Tom wanted to take me out to eat, and I said, no, I got to get to your house and watch the TV.
Yeah. Carol, you have anything you want to say? No. Okay. Lesley, do you have anything?
Yes, I remember the 9/11 attacks. It kind of, it did shock everybody, especially at Akron University. We had big meetings there because of this hit. It kind of takes me back when the Challenger exploded. It was something that kind of sticks with us forever, because no one would have ever believed something like this could happen. But I think it's something, we're all nationalities, everybody got together. The first time really, black, whites, Mexicans, Japanese, all Americans got together and united. And that's the first time something like that has actually really occurred in the USA.
I just wanted to say too, you know, I had my youngest son Salvatore was in the 3rd grade at the time, and he remembers them pulling a TV set in the classroom. So a television was pulled in the classroom, and they had all the children watching it. My other son experienced the same thing. He was where he was, and he actually ended up going to war over it when they had the war over in Iraq, and some of the after effects, he felt that. But when he was in high school, at the time, they pulled a TV in the room so that everybody could watch it. Everybody's eyes were glued to the TV at that time. So that's how we got our source of information. But I want to thank you for listening to my presentation. I hope that I was able to inform you on some of the events that took place, and I'd like to thank you again for coming.